Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Civilizations in Review. I'm so stoked and excited to have Melek Al-Taib here tonight with us, all the way from Libya, to talk all about the Numidia Empire. As a reminder, we will be on 5 places as soon as this podcast and wonderful Civilizations call is over. It'll be on our podcast link at Al Fuzaic on Anchor and all platforms. Also, our YouTube, our Facebook right now, our Instagram TV, and our website. So please check us out and see this wonderful recording in all those places to learn all about the Numidia Empire. But again, thank you so much for being here, all listening. Again, thank you, Melek, for sharing your wisdom with us. And I'll throw it to Megan to read the 101 word intro.
All right, here we go. I will say I did learn about the Numidian Empire a little bit, but this was like a very long time ago when I was a kid. And just like before we get started, Ben and Malak, did you guys have any previous experience with this empire?
Not very much, just a little, but not
Either.
as much as I know through the research.
Totally. Makes sense. Okay. I mean, I couldn't like say anything explicit about it, right? But I've heard of it before, and I think that that's a big step up from some of the other civilizations for sure. Anyway, to get started, North Africa has been ruled by many Amazigh kingdoms. We know Amazigh. We talked about them a few weeks ago, one of which was the Kingdom of Numidia. The Numidian kingdom united North Africa and became a great power comparable to the size of Carthage and Rome at the time. Numidia was located primarily in what is now Algeria and expanded to include parts of Tunisia and Libya. The territory was originally divided between two tribes, Masili in the east and Masasili in the west. Masasili, my goodness. I told you guys I was going to mess that up early on. The Masasili's chief desire was to unite all Amazigh peoples across the region. However, they were conquered by the Masili tribe under King Massanissa's leadership in 203 BCE. So I dare anybody to try to read that 5 times fast, first off. But Malak, tell us a little bit more about your research and what this means.
Thank you so much for having me today in the podcast and in order to talk about my experience in this research. When I chose Numidia civilization, I was interested because I wanted to know more. I'm a Mazigh myself, but I wanted to know more about the kingdom. I wanted to tackle different aspects of history because what I know is very, very little, but maybe I'm amazed that I did not take a lot of time to look that up in detail. But when I wrote this article, it gave me the opportunity to go through all the details and to understand the historical timeline. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. This is a really wonderful way to highlight your own ancestry, potentially. You may be connected to the Numidians, and I think that's really cool that you got the chance to research about it. Let's jump into all of these tribes. It seemed it was quite divisive between all of these tribes. I'm going to butcher it too, I apologize. The Masili and the Masasili tribes. Were they a confederation? Were they nomadic? What do you know about these tribes?
Okay, so for these two tribes, what happened with the Numidian kingdom in the beginning, they had the division of these two tribes, the Masili and the Masasili. So the Masili, which was in the east, and the Masasili, which was in the west, what happened is that they were both in rivalry. And as you introduced, Megan, the Numidian kingdom had a huge power at that time compared to Rome and Carthage, which is the capital of the Carthaginian civilization, which is Tunisia today. So what happened is that they were both in rivalry. And the idea is that Massinissa, who was the first king of the kingdom of Numidia from the Masili tribe, he did the unification process. So they were both divided, and one tribe was sided to Carthage, and the second was sided to Rome. So the conflict was basically who is siding who, and through the details of the First Punic War and the Second Punic War, which caused eventually to having the king Massinissa to basically win, since he sided with Rome and become the first king of the kingdom of Numidia. So the rivalry basically was on and off, and it was mainly a set of alliance with Carthage and Rome, which led eventually to the unification of the kingdom.
My first thought is that for a rivalry, their names are a little too similar, you know, in the sense that like you would imagine you would want some distance from the other people. But I don't know, or maybe it was like a very petty response, right? Like one person says we're gonna be the Massiles, and somebody says, okay, well, we'll be the Messaciles, and then they kind of just went at it for who was the better Ili, dare I say. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's so neat, and like being able to kind of unite with a common purpose, that's pretty powerful. I mean, the process seems to obviously have not been easy for King Mesnisa. And then, I mean, I think that that's really awesome though. That like, I don't know, on the Ben, if you want to hop in here as well as I scramble, but the friendly to unfriendly scale, I think this is the first civilization that we've kind of seen that have had to go from pretty aggressively unfriendly to friendly in order to survive. And we have yet to see that kind of progression in any civilization in any of the weeks prior.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It started as two independent tribes that came together and then lost to another empire, but that like unification is really interesting here. And clearly the MAS like prefix is a very common thing in Northern Africa, as the king's name is Massinissa. There's a lot of mass sounds here, which must just be phonetic, but I think that's cool that there is this unification process of some conquering probably, but then it dissolved after a battle. Is that a pretty good take on that, Malak, you would say?
Yeah, because in the beginning, the kingdom was formed from the original kingdom of Carthage.
Right.
And then this division happened through the conflict that was between Carthage and Rome over the island of Sicily. So that was the whole beginning, because the kingdom was formed from Carthage, and Carthage had rivalry or a conflict with Rome, the Empire of Rome. So that caused the initial division to having two tribes, and then the two tribes had to, as I said, ally with Carthage and Rome, and then in the Second Punic War, a shift of event happened, and then Massinissa eventually allied with Rome, and the kingdom was handed to the Massiles, which led to the unification of the kingdom. So the main problem and the division was caused because the kingdom was derived from Carthage, and Carthage already had a conflict with Rome, and then two tribes were formed, and so on.
I like this back and forth. It shows, I don't know, a lot of like diplomacy and relationship building that I think is relatively unique to all of the civilizations we've talked about, and even the other ones that we haven't yet. This unification process, I'm so fascinated by. Thank you for sharing. I want to jump into Rome a bit. Rome is not one of our ancient empires. Obviously, they had land in modern Middle East, North Africa, but
real quick question: Carthage is correct.
Carthage
we
is,
have the Carthaginian
Carthage
Empire.
Yes, Carthage is, and so I don't know. We made the decision that Rome's modern influence is more in Europe and in Rome today, right? Whereas Numidia is very centrally North African. However, there's this huge connection to the Roman Empire, just as you just mentioned, and the modern influence. It's called the breadbasket of Rome.
Yes.
Like one piece of trivia I remember from Numidia, and this it probably is the only one before today, is that Numidia is actually like a Roman word for just like the North African like region at large. Is that, maybe I just made that up, but that's like the one thing I remember, that like its colony give or take, in North Africa.
Exactly, because
Yeah.
Numidia was influenced highly by the Roman Empire, and the Roman and Numidia's, even though the kingdom was unified by Massinissa, and then after his death, he was succeeded by his son, by his sons, and so on. But the influence remained, and about 20 of the Numidians' towns were considered Roman colonies throughout history. So they were highly influenced by the Roman Empire, and their relationships remained even after the unification of the kingdom.
Sorry, sometimes I listen a little too much and then I don't have anything next to say, which I think is a really wonderful tool. But what kind of harkens in the back of my mind, right, where it's like we've always had this idea of East versus West, and that's kind of what you get here with Rome versus Carthage, and the idea of colonization and the importance of colonialism and that history deep within the roots of, I mean, the world. Like global politics is always kind of dealt with that, and I think it's really neat to kind of see it here, in such an ancient civilization, to be able to kind of say like this has been going on for so long. It kind of makes you think that humans have evolved and then we haven't changed in any way whatsoever.
Exactly, like it's as if we still have the same sequence of events in a more modernized world. But I think it's maybe this, I don't know, it's not maybe a problem, maybe, I don't know, to have this until now. But I think that history shall continue to repeat certain events, and maybe this is one of those, or maybe what we have today is inspired by old times.
I think knowing that unification is the end, the ending of this
Exactly.
story is very positive. I think that if it was anything else, the idea that history repeating itself might be a little bit too dreary, I'm not gonna lie, for a live Facebook event. But definitely this idea that in the end of it all, like we can all kind of find overcome our differences, and unify in such in a positive way, in a stronger way. Ben,
Exactly.
what is your next topic is going to be my question for you. Because I know we jump around on topics and sometimes you steal the ones that I want.
This is just really a really wonderful conversation. It has so many like hints to today. I'm looking at the ruling system specifically, and in this like unification spirit, you know, he focused on political foundations like intermarriages and you know, connections with other tribes. You know, I'm not saying we're intermarrying today. That's a weird modern connection, but connecting with a different community other than yourselves, I think is such a really valuable lesson if we're going to look at the modern influence. And I just think that his emphasis on that, I think is pretty unique, I would say, for 2,000 years ago to actually focus on this is the shared land that we have. Let's bring these communities together. I know we said unification or bringing together almost this entire live stream so far, but I think that's such a really wonderful lesson learned from Numidia. Is that a lot of what you researched, Malek, when you looked into Numidia more deeply?
Yeah, because for example, like on the military front, Massinissa knew the value of keeping good relations with the Romans, so that's why the kingdom was influenced greatly by the Roman Empire, because when Massili sided with the Romans, then Romans, they declared that they're taking over, and basically they defeated Carthage. So that alliance that happened, it was important because Massinissa knew that, you know, like he should not do anything that's against Romans, but also he find a way that, okay, maybe I need to create and ensure that he has a safe kingdom from Carthage. So I think he played it in a very safe, and also in a very in a very wise way. I mean, in order to ally with the Roman Empire, it means that you have to keep good relations, because that's how they were handed the kingdom, King Massinissa. But also he understood that, okay, I have to keep good relations, but I need to keep a strong army to ensure that the kingdom is safe. And this is what actually happened.
This is really fun because I think it's so very different than the stories that we tend to hear from a lot of other civilizations. And just kind of running through, because they've kind of all muddled together a little bit in my mind, but running through the past few weeks and the past couple months, and Ben, you can definitely help me flesh out some details here, but we've had a lot of like general skirmishes where the relationships are kind of binary, where it's like, yes, you help, no, you don't. We want to, conquer, or we just want to like protect our land. And the ways in which we see people, rise and fall throughout time is really fascinating. But kind of being able to have that dynamic relationship with like your own people, and acknowledging even like almost like to the level of multiculturalism, right? Where we're looking at something like that today, and lots of people say like multiculturalism is bad for culture and it's bad for economy. And I hope that everybody watching this can tell that I disagree with that statement. And I think when you go on the Alphusaic website and you meet a lot of our writers and you listen to some of our speakers, there's a lot there that very much shows data does not agree that multiculturalism is a bad thing. It definitely makes us stronger. Being able to engage with one another in a really positive, open-minded, forward, thinking way is just so much better than not. And I guess like that's kind of the moral of the story of the Masili tribe, which is really nice. One of the things that I kind of wanted to jump into, Ben, you brought in language a little bit earlier in terms of Numidia being a Roman word, but I kind of was curious, Malek, in your research, Masili, what does that have a specific meaning? Was it kind of just like plucked out of, I don't know,
No, honestly, I looked that up, but I
yeah.
only got like these names, and I did not have any meanings whatsoever. But maybe like there is another meaning in another language, but I did not really. But I was curious to know what these two words meant, but I didn't have like an in-depth definition, and I just had the names over and over again. So,
well, that's how we know. I would imagine, I don't know, if I was a historian, and this is why I'm not a historian team, but I would 100% get them mixed up. I'd be like, yeah, these guys came from there and these people came from there, and then just like completely switch back and forth constantly. Goodness knows I did that one time in a research paper, and it did not pan out well for a full understanding of everything, but that's a different story for a different time.
What I find so fascinating about this empire really only lasted about 70 years altogether. And yet to have this mega impact on modern Northern Africa today, I think is really, really fascinating. Probably because Rome kept really great receipts and information. I mean, I'm reading over the key accomplishments section right now. And this 28 volume treatise that was written by like agricultural production and input and impact was so well liked that it was translated into Latin. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the language was at that time, probably some mass starting language, given that is the common thread here. But that is something I find so tremendous, is this unification impact has still huge, reverberations today, 2,000 years later, more than 2,000 years later. Can you talk a little bit about this agriculture? I know your passion in of itself is agriculture in Northern Africa, and this is an empire that really valued that. So can you chat more about Numidia's career?
Exactly, because agriculture is considered one of the key achievements of the Numidian kingdom, and many Numidians were eventually led to become farmers, because that actually even reflected on their diet. Massinissa made sure that agriculture was basically inspired by the Cartesian techniques at that time. And it made a huge deal because it was influencing their diet. They were basically focusing on a plant-based diet. No alcohol was involved in their diet. And that, as they said, uh, made them strong warriors when they had any conflicts or war or anything of that matter. But agriculture made a huge deal, and I think Masinessa valued the Carthaginian techniques, and they focused on that, and that led eventually to trade. I mean, in order of trading not only like silver and so on, if we're talking about metals, but we're also talking about food. So they valued the importance of agriculture and food security at that time. And I think years later, if we're seeing the region, the North African region, agriculture plays a huge role today. And now food security is back at the question, and how we can actually be inspired by the old techniques and bring them back in our modern world today. Uh, and it's one of the not only questions, but one of the things that even when I did the research focusing on agriculture, one of the things that I kept in mind was keeping the traditional practices that we had before and how we can actually use them in our time. And it's crazy to see that at that time agriculture played a huge role, and now in North Africa agriculture has a huge advancement, and we can see it in many countries. In Tunisia we can see it in and also Morocco, and in some parts of Algeria and some parts of Libya. So it's quite inspiring to see the succession of this practice.
So, for those of us who might not be agriculture people, but to also explain for those of us who are agricultural people, because I know a lot of people out there are watching this and thinking to themselves, yes, but also like, what? Tell me more. What techniques have you seen that are like specifically coming out of this time that you would say like North Africa could use more often, or like looking into the future, what techniques are those?
Okay, so mainly at that time, it was once seen as a wasteland with no real agricultural prospects. So at that time, Numidia, or let's say the king of King Masinessa, he focused on how to preserve land. They were using like irrigation techniques. They were focusing on how to irrigate to how to use water in a very conservative way, but at the same time effectively, and how to grow certain crops based on the weather. And as you know, the North African region climate is considered one of the best climate to this day. You can grow many products based on season, and climate was not at that time, I mean, like comparing the time before and now, but climate had a huge advancement. So they were focusing on water irrigation techniques, what to grow, and how to use the products that they had or the crops in trading with other regions and so on. So focusing on the water management, which is something that's not quite used today, but so many people who are focusing on agriculture now, they're trying to bring back what was done before, like drip irrigation, which was used before, and now it's back to the scene. We can see it in Morocco, for example, and even Tunisia. So having this technique, for example, the drip irrigation, which was used in the past by the Numidian kingdom, we are seeing it used today, and a lot of debate is around the best irrigation techniques that we can use, or get inspired by the past, and how we can use them today. So, and drip irrigation is considered one of the most effective ways to irrigate crops with little amount of water, but at the same time ensure that you have a healthy grown crop, and which was important at that time, given the resources that they had, and they didn't have a lot of technological advancement.
No, that's so important. And I think that, even today, as somebody, again, who does not know any agricultural anything, environmental conservatism is always important, no matter what. And being able to kind of like hold on to those values, obviously ethically, and then also knowing from sustainability purposes going forward, that's going to be very, very important for this region specifically, but then everybody else who is also engaging in farming, which is pretty much everybody else.
I find it really, really fascinating and important too that ancient techniques for irrigation are incredibly effective because that was how they survived. I mean, obviously we have modern technology and can add machinery aspects and efficiency to it, but the root technique of drip irrigation clearly was a success, and provided, for this empire, and it was called the breadbasket of Rome. I mean, how did they get all that food? Was from this irrigation. It just is incredible, really, to showcase these ancient techniques are the ones that work. Yeah, we can have a special like metal faucet to drip irrigate, sure, but
and also like how to and how we encourage people, Numidians, to become farmers and to focus on the land, to turn it from that was once considered a wasteland to like an active land. And I think even having the focus of people on their land and what they can grow and how they can expand their production and so on, and how they can like use water irrigation techniques from the Cartesians, and how they can eventually have a sustainable economic system in which they can use their production for trading. I think it was quite smart, because encouraging people to start a practice from nothing, I believe is considered is a great achievement at that time.
And thank you for writing about this and sharing it with the world. So I really appreciate
thank you so much.
Civilizations for that exact purpose, and what a beautiful example of an empire to spotlight. Thank you again for writing it.
So really quick, just because we have a couple of minutes left, but I really want to hear about what your next projects are for Elfusaic, only because I know that you have such a really wonderful, rich agricultural background, and I want to learn everything more about this as, again, a non-agricultural gal. I know Ben is a non-agricultural guy, and so yeah, tell us a little bit more about what we can see from you on the Elfusaic website.
Okay, what I have in mind, actually, since I did a heavy research last year focusing on agriculture in Libya, and it's not a sector that is being heavily focused on in relation to Libya today, with the political scene and the economic scene and so on. So what I want to keep in mind is how I can actually make a focus on different regions in Libya, because each region in Libya is different, climatic wise and also agricultural wise. And I want to bring that to Elfusaic to focus on maybe the South, their agricultural practices, also what's happening on the ground, and what policies are being used and implemented and what can be enhanced, and also taking it from the East, because what I focused on last year was mainly the capital, Tripoli in Libya, but I want to expand that to other regions and understand the agricultural practices that are available in different regions in Libya, and how can those eventually grow into a national strategy. So I hope to bring back more on agriculture, focusing on Libya specifically, but expanding that to other regions.
I'm so excited already.
You're gonna
I'm
make Megan and
excited
I
a lot.
agriculture people. This is so cool. I'm really excited to learn about. I mean, you already have an infographic on our website about the research you've already done. So can't wait for the stuff you do next. Thank you for making Megan and I agriculture people and our
Thank
readers.
you so much for having me and for giving me this chance.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're gonna wrap up here. What a wonderful article. There's still so much more about the Numidians out there, and even parts we didn't cover from Malik's Numidia 101. So thank you again, Malik, for writing and engaging and showing all of the wonderful parts of this really, really great empire. And thank you all for listening. Again, to catch this, we're on every single social media platform at Alfusaic. That's ALFUSAIC. And our website is alfusaic.net. ALFUSAIC.net. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, morning, everyone, and go Numidia. Thanks again.
Thank you.